In this training, we're going to talk about the different types of antennas that you can upgrade for your helium hotspot. And there's a range of variety of different antennas, and it's important to first understand the different types and the different purposes of those antennas. So I want to start off by introducing you guys to a couple different options here. And as you may or may not know, our current voucher system that we issue with your helium hotspot order is eligible to get an 8 dBi antenna or a 5.8 dBi antenna. And I want to show this to you guys because it's very, very important to understand which one is the right antenna for you. The 8 dBi antenna is not necessarily a better antenna depending on the situation that you're in. So let's take a look at these different signal ranges and degrees of reach between these different antenna types. And so right here, we're looking at a 9 dBi antenna, and it's an omnidirectional antenna, which means it shoots in two directions here. And we'll see that it has a very narrow range, but a very far reach, right? It has 25 degrees, and it's able to extend, for a pretty far range, but it doesn't cover much area. Okay, there's also a difference between these dBis on the way that the radio signal actually projects from these antennas. So as we go down to lower dBis, we'll see we get less range, but more radial coverage, right? We get more coverage around. So when we move down to 7 dBi, we'll see this cone shape, and then down to a 5 dBi, which is close enough. You can imagine a 5.8 being somewhere between here, okay? And these two, this 9 dBi and approximately this 5 dBi, is similar ranges that to the antennas that we are providing vouchers for, and they're the most common for different situations. Now, again, it's very important to understand how to figure out which one is the right one for you. The other thing that's very, very important, and I do also want to point out that the 2 dBi antenna, which is very close to the stock antenna that comes with your hotspot, has a 360-degree radius. That's why they issue that stock antenna around that dBi, because it's able to reach completely around, but at a very short range. So let's talk about these just a little bit. Now, when it comes to strong dBi antennas, the wavelength, and if you can see my camera down on the bottom right here of this video, the signal projects at a much flatter projection, okay, when it's being broadcast, which means that it shoots out very straight, okay? Now, if we talk about a 2 dBi antenna, the signal that projects is like an umbrella shape. It goes up and it comes back down, okay? So it projects a curve. And the reason for that is because we want to be able to make sure that signal can reach other hotspots. And there could be obstructions like buildings or walls and stuff, all types of obstructions. So what the lower dBi signals do is they're able to hop right over, shoot up and then back down and overcome those obstacles, okay? Now, when we talk about the 5.8 dBi antenna, which is one of the ones that we issue with our voucher codes, it projects a less umbrella shape, but it still has a vertical projection and comes back down. Might not be as steep as a lesser dBi antenna to go over obstructions and buildings, but it still has enough to get a far reach as well as a bit of vertical range and height around obstacles. So the best practices to think about when choosing these antennas is, what is your current situation? So let me give you some examples. If you live in a high-rise building on a top floor or a high floor, and you look out your window and you can see clear view of the city without big buildings blocking a portion of your range of where your signal is going to shoot out from, that is a good sign that you're going to be able to kind of shoot that signal out without any obstructions, okay? And with best practices, let's say you have a balcony or you can mount this outside of your window, which we're gonna talk about and we have a training for, different strategies on mounting and installing your antenna. But for now, we're talking about the different types of antennas. So if you are able to get this antenna very high up without obstructions, and you have a lot of hotspots in your range of that kind of cone-shaped signal, it's a good option to go with an 8 dBi. Now, if you live in a single-story home or even a standard family home in a neighborhood and you have other buildings around you, you will most likely need to go with a 5.8 dBi antenna because you want to make sure your signal can hop over other buildings, which are probably surrounding. So you also need to think about what type of geographic area you live in. So as an example, if you live in a very busy city, let's say New York or Chicago, in a metropolitan area, there's probably a lot of buildings, right? And so that means that an 8 dBi antenna, if you live in a high rise, isn't going to be good because it's going to shoot into another building most likely, and it's going to get blocked. And you don't have a very large range of signal, you have a cone shape. So you got to direct that signal in the right area. So it's very important to understand that if you live in a very dense area with a lot of hotspots, and we're going to talk about later in this video how to see that, how many hotspots are around you and how to come up with this decision, you want to probably go with a less range dBi, the 5.8. Okay, so most cases, okay, this is my recommendation, is most people watching this video should be going with a 5.8 dBi antenna. It is more common, it is more likely that you live in a situation that will require a 5.8 dBi antenna. It has a wider range, so it can reach hotspots that are closer to it and in a wider signal, and it also has a bit of reach, okay? So in the other strategy is if you do live in a single family home and there's strategies where people mount a pole, a very high pole, and attach their antenna to that pole, and they're able to clear all of the buildings that might be there, even if they live in a single family home and they have their antenna mounted on this pole. An 8 dBi antenna may work for you, but in most cases, you're going to want to get a 5.8 dBi antenna with this voucher code that we issue with our hotspot leases. Now, you can also still try the stock antenna that you have if you live in a super, super dense area and you have a lot of buildings around you. You still can try the stock antenna that comes with your hotspot. But in most cases, you're going to want the 5.8 dBi, okay? So that's my recommendation for you guys. And I'm going to show you some different ways to, number one, determine how many hotspots are around you, okay? And I'm also going to show you guys some examples of different situations that I would recommend an 8 dBi antenna, okay? And so that's kind of going to help us understand which one is right for you. Now, here I am logged into Helium Track, and I'm looking at my area of Las Vegas, okay? And so normally what we see here, sorry about that, is you want to make sure that you look at your address where you're going to have your hotspot and see how many hotspots are around you, okay? So for example, if you lived anywhere in Las Vegas, most likely your stock antenna or 5.8 dBi antenna is going to be appropriate. You're going to have a lot of hotspots you can reach, and you look and you see that, right? So, for example, if I lived here and I click on this, I could see that my hotspot's going to reach a lot of other hotspots, and it reaches farther than this, okay? This is a small range. This is what we call the sweet spot, but it has a much farther range. It's going to reach up to a couple miles, okay? It's going to be able to communicate with other hotspots. Now, I want to show an example here of another hotspot that we, I'm going to move over here to Helium's Explorer. This is explorer.helium.com. And you can put in your address and see also very similarly where there's a bunch of hotspots. Now in this case here, guys, I'm going to show you some hotspots which very much warrant a high gain antenna, like an 8 dBi. So we can see here we have a mountain range, and someone has gone and put some hotspots all the way out here. And you can see there's no other closed hotspots because this is out in the mountains. And so if this had a 2 dpi antenna or 5 dbi antenna, it wouldn't communicate with a lot of hotspots, right? But I can assure you that this person is using a high gain antenna, and you can see that cone shape is being projected towards all these other hotspots in the city, right? And you can see it has a very far range. So in cases like this, if you're kind of off to the side, but you, again, remember that you need, in order to use a high gain antenna, it shoots a flat signal. You need to have that antenna high off the ground and clearing all the obstructions until it reaches another hotspot. So it's very important that you have a good, what we call line of sight, as well as you're distanced out. And so you can point your cone signal towards the rest of those hotspots. And this is a very good example of using a high gain antenna. If I was in the middle here, if I have my hotspot, kind of close to other hotspots, I can go and opt in for a 5.8 dBi antenna. All right, guys. So that's a really good example of that. So I want to just go back and reiterate this. What are the main things to look for? If you live in a single family home in a standard neighborhood or densely populated area population, then most likely your stock antenna or the voucher code with your antenna, with the 5.8 voucher code, is going to be the right one for you. If you live in a high-rise building and you have very good line of sight, meaning no obstructions, or you can get that antenna very high off the ground with no obstructions, very good line of sight, then an 8 dBi antenna is good. You want to make sure that you can project that signal towards the rest of where the hotspots are. So you need to look in Helium Track and say, okay, if I live, maybe up here in the corner and I don't see a lot of hotspots here, but I can get my antenna, I can mount it on my roof or whatever, and I can project that signal here towards the city, then I can reach a lot of hotspots. And that's really the strategy you should be going with. If you're really unsure about what antenna you should use, you gotta really just see, are there hotspots around me? And if so, if you're not sure where you're going to place this antenna, then you probably just want to go with a 5.8 dBi antenna. You get your voucher code for that. Again, our voucher codes that we issue for our antennas are only for people who ordered hotspots. Okay, so we're not giving voucher codes out to everyone. If you've ordered your hotspot, we are going to be issuing voucher codes to you to go and redeem that and get a low-cost antenna based off of these recommendations. All right, guys, so those are the differences between the 5.8 dBi antenna and the 8 dBi antenna. Again, another look here, the higher the dBi, the farther the range, the flatter the signal, meaning there's no height, it doesn't go over buildings, and the narrower the signal, is broadcast as a cone shape. The lower the dBi, the less range you get, but you get more coverage in a radial area, and your signal goes up and back down. So take your time. Think about this before you go and use your voucher code for your hotspot, okay, or to get your antenna. Think about, where are you installing your hotspot? Look around, go outside and see, okay, are there obstructions? Okay. Here's another great resource I'm going to throw in here for you guys. And I believe that Google Maps has a 3D view that you can use. I'm going to see if I can find it in here just a second. Okay, I just switched over actually. Here's a great resource that you can use. You can go to earth.google.com. Okay, so product of Google. And what I did here is, and it's going to take a little while to load, so be patient. And what you're going to do is you're going to search your address wherever you plan on installing your hotspot. Okay, and once it zooms into your area or address, you can click on, there's going to be a button here. I already clicked it, but it's going to say 3D. Okay, I can switch between 2D and 3D. So I'm going to click on 3D. I'm going to wait just a second here, okay? And what that's going to do is I'm going to zoom in. I can zoom in using these plus buttons, or I can use the wheel on my mouse. I can roll it up and it's zooming me in now. And as I zoom in, it's going to start loading 3D imagery for this area. And you can see here, I'm going to see if I can pan or tilt. I know there's a way to do it. I'll figure it out in a moment here. But basically what you can do is you can look at your city. You can look at, okay, here is my house as an example. Does my signal, is it going to reach over other areas? So this is a really good way to see, are there any buildings that are going to block your range of signal? How tall are those buildings, right? So this is a really good tool you can use, and you are the only person that can make this determination by using these tools to see, okay, I plan on putting my hotspot this high, and I mean my antenna this high, and what obstructions are in my way. Again, the 8 dBi antenna, it shoots that flat signal and it shoots very far in a cone shape. So if you have that ability, or if you don't have a lot of hotspots around you and you can get that antenna high up, you have the ability to reach a lot of hotspots. If you live in an area, standard area such as this, you live in a neighborhood, most likely a 5.8 dBi antenna is right for you. So guys, look at Helium Track, use explore.helium.com to analyze different hotspots. You can use earth.google.com to analyze the 3D aspect of the buildings. Okay, so this is really, really powerful, and come to a determination of, should you get a 5.8 dBi antenna, or should you get an 8 dBi antenna, or should you use the stock antenna that has that radial signal? All right, guys, I'm going to end it for this training. In the next training, we're going to talk about cables and signal loss and other types of strategy.